Okay, so welcome everybody. If you're tuned in tonight, it's the Living Life with Lynda show, and we are doing a special event tonight on structured water. And if you heard my show last Sunday with Halsey, we did an interview on episode 122, and it was all about structured water. And what is structured water? Well, that's what we're going to talk about tonight. I quickly want to just introduce myself in case you're not familiar with me. My name is Lynda Adams. I live in Westbrook, Maine, and I have a business called Successful Balanced Living. And under that umbrella, I operate as an integrative intuitive health coach. And I also have a radio show podcast called Living Life with Lynda. It airs in Maine on WLOB every Sunday at 11 a.m., 11 to 12. And then I do also put that out as a podcast on all of your favorite podcast apps. So be sure to check them out. I've done a lot of shows, 123 now as of today. So I connected with Halsey Snow a few years ago. I had a different radio show and he was on that show at that time. It was a half an hour long, and Halsey, I don't know how the heck we covered all that information in a half an hour.
Very hard to believe.
It is hard to believe because it's a lot of information, and I felt like we struggled to fit it all in an hour. So who knows how we did it in 30 minutes before. But I don't even remember how I connected with you. Do you remember? I think I might have just reached out.
I contacted you about advertising in the Elm magazine here.
Oh, Essential Living Maine. Yes. Okay. Right.
Yep. And that's how it started.
Yeah, and I bought some of your products, noticed a difference, and then I was actually at Syntropy in Portland, attending some spirituality classes there, and they sell your products there. Mm-hmm. And I said, oh, I need some new products because I just opened a new office in Gorham, and so I bought your set of chakra glasses, which are beautiful. And I bought the Aladdin carafe for my house, and also another bottle that is actually for hot beverages as well. So we're going to talk about all of that stuff that you guys offer, but that's kind of how we reconnected. Yeah. And so Halsey Snow lives in Casco, Maine, which isn't too far from me, and owns a company called Golden Ratio Products. And tonight he is going to talk about what is structured water, why it's actually healthier for our bodies. And he's actually going to even go into further beyond that and talk about the actual, what do you call it? Structure? No, golden ratio. Is it just golden ratio?
Yeah, the golden ratio.
Flower of life.
Yeah.
How do you say the
Fibonacci sequence?
Okay. I know somebody named Finichetti, so it's very close.
Okay.
Fibonacci sequence. And we've got a lot going on here tonight. Mm-hmm. So without further ado, what we're going to do is I'm going to pass this over to Halsey. Halsey, I'll give you a minute to introduce yourself and talk about your background and how you got into this. And then I'll have you share your screen and walk us through a presentation. The big difference here tonight is people could have listened to the interview we did, but I really like the visual that you're going to show tonight with what does an actual structured cell of the structured water look like.
Right. Why don't we go right into that? Okay,
that sounds great.
So I'm going to share my screen.
Perfect. And what I will say is if anybody has questions as we go along, if you're watching on Facebook Live, you certainly can put them into the comments section and I'll take note of them. But we're going to try to get through this presentation as quickly as we can. And so I will save your questions until the end. Or if you want to save them until the end and ask at that point, that's great. I know Halsey will ask as we're going along a few different times if you do have questions up to that point. So either way, we'll try to get your questions answered. So take it away, Halsey.
Thank you, Lynda. I just want to say at the outset that I don't consider myself an expert on water. It's not my field of training. However, I do consider myself a student of water. And for the last 10 years, I've been studying it, pretty intensely. And in this presentation, basically, I'm sharing some of what I've learned about it. And you can learn about it the same way that I have. So I call it the untold story of water because it's actually something about water that you don't find very many places. And I also call it the next wave of water consciousness because there is something about this that you start to relate to water differently when you know some of the things I'm going to be going over tonight. So I start with, what's very commonly known. A lot of people have some sense of this, that the human body is approximately 65 to 75% water by weight. We're mostly water beings, even though we look like we're very solid. And that's by weight. But if you actually count the number of cells in the average human body, we're actually closer to 99% water in terms of the number of molecules in your body. So for example, 83% of your blood, sorry, that says bood, it's blood, is water. 90% of your brain, 99% of your cerebrospinal fluid, the most important fluid in your body that bathes your brain and your spinal cord, is water. So obviously, this leads us to our first conclusion here. The quality of your water is very important to the quality of your health. And so we're going to talk about what quality actually means when it comes to water. These are just a few areas that have been discovered to be related to the quality of your water: cellular hydration, your ability to detoxify your body, disease resistance and recovery. Aging has been shown to be related to the quality of your water. So there's a lot of different aspects of our health that are very related to water. And water is not something that's very well understood by science either. So I put this up just as a kind of a reminder to us all that science knows some things about water, but there's a lot more that's not known about water than there is known by science. So, for example, how does water get to the top of tall trees? You know, the only thing that science can say is, well, there's capillary action, in which it's shown that, you know, in a very thin tube, air pressure will force water up a tube, but that can account for at most 3 feet of rise of water in a tree. Yet you take a 60, 70, 80-foot tree, no way we understand how water is getting up that tree. So when we're talking about water, we're talking about you. That's the first point I'd like you to remember. When we're talking about water, we're talking about you and your physical body. And this is where I would say most people are when it comes to what I would call your water consciousness. In other words, what considerations go into your process of bringing water to yourself, regardless of where you get it. Most people want water that's clean, that's pure, what they consider to be safe, of course. They want to trust the source. And for each of us, we don't bring water to us that we don't trust the source. Maybe you're concerned with the mineral balance in the water. It's a good idea to be concerned about the mineral balance in your water. And maybe you're concerned about the pH of your water. And that's another thing to be concerned about. Is it acid? Is it alkaline? Is it neutral? And if you go this far in your considerations of the quality of the water that you bring to yourself, you've gone further than most people probably go. But the question marks are there at the bottom, because my question is there something more about water that you would want to know in terms of its quality? And my answer to that is an unequivocal yes, there is. And it's something that's not on this list. So, in what I call the next wave of water consciousness, we're looking at water as more than just an inert substance. It actually has the properties of what many people call a liquid crystal. And I'll explain what that means a little more in just a moment. And so we're going to look at what water is like in nature and how this is different from the water you get, because of course, the only place we get water is from nature. That's where it is, in its natural habitat, so to speak. And we're going to talk about why structure is so important in water, and coming to the realization that the structure of your water affects all the functions of your body. So this is where we're headed. Okay, and this is one of the books that I like to recommend to people. If any of you are interested, I will share my recommended reading list with Lynda. She can put it on her Facebook page and on her website. But this is a book that will really, if you read this book, it'll blow your mind about water. And it's very readable, I would say. It's by Dr. Carly Newday, and it's called Water Codes. It's one of the few books that I like to recommend unequivocally. So to start, I'm going to talk about 3 different types of water, okay? First of all, water in nature. Water in nature is in a state we call structured. I'm going to show you exactly what that means. Secondly, we differentiate from water in nature processed water. This is the water we bring to ourselves. Most people only have access to processed water, and that water is in a state we call unstructured. And third is what I would call biowater, and that's the water that's in your body. And unlike processed water and similar to water in nature, it is structured, but it's very highly structured, even more structured than it is in nature. So let's go into exactly what that means, okay? What is water like in nature? Well, almost all water in nature is structured, and what that means is that the individual molecules are clustered together in hexagonal units. Hexagonal means 6-sided. This is water's natural state, and that's why it's considered a liquid crystal, because of that 6-sided hexagonal structure. So here's a graphic representation of structured water, and notice when you look at this, you can see a repeating pattern. You can see in each unit that each unit is the same as the other units. This is what structured water looks like in a graphic representation. And if you were to take a sample of water like this in its structured state, and you were to freeze it and look at it under a microscope, it would look like that. So there's an actual photograph of structured water. Okay, notice it looks like a snowflake. That's the kind of structure that we're talking about when we refer to structured water. It's a 6-sided hexagonal design. It looks like a snowflake. Even in the liquid state, the water molecules tend to cluster together in nature. Here's another example. Notice that's different from the last one, but it's still 6-sided. It's still hexagonal. Water can take many, many different hexagonal shapes, but as long as it's in that structure, you know it's the way it is when it's in nature. Now, here's kind of like the bad news. You know, how does water get unstructured? Well, it turns out, and this was quite a shock to me when I first heard about it, that it's the actual technology that we use to bring water to us from nature that causes the water to lose its naturally occurring structure. So things as simple as straight pipes. You know, there isn't any plumbing, pretty much, that isn't composed of straight pipes. And pumps and pumping water under pressure and putting it through filters and water softeners and any kind of water processing unit and stagnant storage. If you look at this list, you're looking at pretty much everything we do, we humans do to water, to bring water to us that's safe, that's potable, and that's quote unquote healthy. But unfortunately, the technology we use to do that causes the water to lose that naturally occurring structure. So what do we mean by that? Well, again, here's a graphical representation of unstructured water. Notice that unlike the other graphical representation I showed you, there's no repeating pattern here. You can't see any recognizable structure in this representation. And if you were to take a sample of water in this state and freeze it and look at it under a microscope, it would look like that. Well, it's like a blob, right? There's no recognizable structure. You can see remnants of a structure in that, or it might look like that. There's another example. Again, this is an actual photograph of water in its unstructured state. So we can see there's a big difference between structured and unstructured water. And now we know that the reason water gets unstructured is because of the way we process it when we bring it to ourselves for our uses. This is another graphical representation. It's called water cluster formation. It's just to show you that when the human body takes that structured water and uses it to build and maintain all the different structures in our body, it gets much more complicated, but it's still in the structured state. And of course, you know, the human body is composed completely of different types of structures. So here's a little example of why crystalline structure is important on a molecular level. And what I have here are 3 different examples of the element carbon. Now we know that carbon is an element, so we're talking the atom carbon is the same as the molecule carbon. There's 3 different forms of carbon here. The pencil is there because of the lead. The lead in your pencil, which is very soft, is called graphite. But guess what? It's pure carbon. Graphite is a soft form of carbon. And right underneath that is a picture of coal. Now, coal is much harder than graphite. Coal is a great fuel for burning. It creates heat. We dig it out of the ground. Coal is also pure carbon. There's nothing else in there but carbon. And look at the picture on the right. Diamond, the hardest substance known to humankind. Beautiful, right? Very different from coal and very different from graphite, but still it's pure carbon. There's nothing else in there but carbon. What makes the difference in these 3 different manifestations of carbon? The difference is the way the carbon molecules are arranged on a molecular level. That's what makes the difference. And that's why crystalline structure is very important, because a difference in the crystalline structure on a molecular level creates different properties on the level at which we experience it. Okay. Again, there's the human body. I probably should have put this slide before the other one, just to show you, you know, this is the muscular system. You can't talk about any aspect of the human body without referring to its structure. And where do all those structures come from? Well, of course, our DNA creates it. That's what DNA does. It creates structure in the body, and it uses all the elements that it needs to create these structures: protein, carbohydrates, fats, minerals, and of course, water. And since, as we know, our body is majority water, the process of creating structure in the body starts with water. Now, here's a man many people have heard of. He's deceased now. He was a Japanese scientist, Dr. Masaru Emoto. He studied water. He wrote 5 books on water. In fact, this is his first book on water. It was published in English in the year 2000, so not that long ago, 21 years ago. The Hidden Messages in Water. It blew people's minds, and it blew science of water right out of the water. Okay, it's a very interesting book. I'm going to show you what the basis was for this book. This is another book of his. This is his 3rd book, called Love Thyself. It's a beautiful book. I recommend both of these, especially this one, Love Thyself, The Message from Water, number 3. Excellent book. These are on my reading list. Here's what he did. And well, first let me tell you what he's known for, okay? And I've kind of summarized his work into 2 major points that are related to what we're doing tonight. First is his method. He began using frozen water crystal photography to illustrate qualitatively different states of water. So we take samples of water and freeze it and look at it under a microscope in a cold lab, a very cold lab. Secondly, using that method, he demonstrated that water responds to human intention in the form of thoughts, feelings, words, prayer, pretty much any form of expression that you can imagine. Water responds to it. So here's what he did. He would take straight-sided glass bottles. There's an example of it on the lower left side of this slide. A straight-sided glass water bottle with a plastic cap. And he would fill it with unstructured water. Now, we know what unstructured water looks like because I showed you some pictures of it, right? He would take it from the tap. Any water coming out of a tap is going to be pretty much unstructured. So he would take a sample of that, freeze it, look at it, take a picture of it, the unstructured state, put it in his bottle, and on the side of his bottle, he would write different words on a piece of paper and tape it to the side of the bottle and leave it in his lab overnight. This was his method, okay? Then in the morning, he would come in, take a sample of water from that bottle, which was filled with unstructured water the previous evening, freeze it, and put it under the microscope and look at it. And what he discovered is that depending on what he wrote on the piece of paper on the outside of the bottle, the water on the inside of the bottle became structured overnight, and the structure of it in these different snowflakes would look different depending on what he wrote on the outside of the bottle. Now that's pretty amazing, don't you think? The water is responding to words on a piece of paper on the outside of the bottle. So the water's not even in physical contact, you could say, other than through the glass with the words. So here's the crystalline structure of water he got from the words Happy Christmas in English. Isn't that a pretty design, okay? Here's another example. Notice that in it's the word Hinduism, and it's written in Japanese. And you get this kind of water, structured water crystal from that word in Japanese. Here's the crystal he got from the Star of David. Not even the word Star of David, but the actual graph. You know, it's a symbol of the Star of David. Now, notice that water, this is what I mean by water responds to human intention, that it doesn't matter the language. It doesn't even matter if it is a language or some kind of symbolic representation. The water is picking up the intention, the energy of it, and it's structuring itself according to that intention. Here's another one, neighborly love, again written in Japanese, another hexagonal structured water crystal. Here's one for honesty, written in Japanese. And again, it's a hexagonal structured water crystal. Now, not all the words he used are what we would consider to be nice words. For example, here's the picture he got of the water when he put on the bottle blasphemy, both in English and in Japanese. Now look at those pictures. That's not hexagonal structure, is it? That's not the way water is in nature. We could say, in fact, that that's denatured water, that that's some kind of a structure that is not natural to water, but it's the way water has responded to the energy and the word blasphemy. So we start to get a pretty clear idea that water does respond to human intention for better or worse. Now remember, this is the way water is in nature. Hexagonal, six-sided, snowflake, crystalline structure. That's what we're looking for. That's what our body needs to be healthy. So, as I was going through my study of water, the question came into my mind, well, okay, how does water maintain its structure in nature? Water's in nature, it's structured, but, you know, and it gets unstructured when we take it from nature. So what is it about water in nature that allows it to keep its structure? And this is, again, this is not a scientifically proven, what I'm going to share with you. This is my take on how water maintains its structure in nature, because what I came to realize is how different water is in nature than when we take water and we process it for our uses. First of all, water in nature is always moving. when it's healthy, right? And what does everybody know about stagnant water in nature? It's amazing, isn't it? It doesn't matter where you've grown up, but it seems as if pretty much everybody knows stagnant water in nature is not good. You don't drink it. You don't go into it. In fact, it's best if you stay away from it. So water in nature, when it's in a healthy state, is always moving. Secondly, when water's moving in nature, it doesn't move in a straight line. You look at any map, any picture of any body of water or any moving water, you will not see a straight line. These are pictures I just got off the internet of different rivers and bodies of water. If you see on a map a straight line of water, I guarantee you that was made by humans. That's the only, because that's the most efficient transport of water, which is why we do it that way. But when water is moving in nature, it does not move in a straight line. Okay, third point. When water's moving in nature, it's always moving in a vortex. And this is what we mean by a vortex. You can see it when you pull the plug on the drain or you flush the toilet. The water goes into a vortex movement. Now, why does it do that? It's not the structure that's holding it that forces it to do that way. That's the way water naturally moves. You know, when raindrops are falling through the air, they fall in a vortex. It's water's natural form of movement. Even, and this has been measured by scientists in different ways, and natural scientists, when water appears to be moving horizontally through a river, you can find horizontal vortices in that river because that's the way water moves in nature. So, and last point, when water's moving in nature, it's not under pressure. Think about springs, right? A natural spring. A natural spring comes bubbling up out of the ground, right? This is a picture of a spring. Someone put a pipe in there so it could flow. But notice that there's no pump pumping that water out of the ground. It's just water coming out of the ground of its own, and it's not under pressure. So water in nature, it's always moving. It moves in a vortex, not in straight lines and not under pressure, and it's always in the environment of the golden ratio. And I'll explain why that is in a few minutes in another part of my presentation here, okay? Once again, water processing, when we take water from nature, we subject it to conditions that are almost exactly the opposite of the way it is in nature, right? We force it under pressure through straight pipes. Water cannot vortex itself in a straight pipe, I can tell you that, okay? Put it through filters, stagnant storage, pressurized tanks, and it's pretty much the case. I don't know of any water systems that are designed using the golden ratio in the proportions of the technology that make up the water system. It might be a very different water system if it was. So you can see that our use of water, when we take it from nature, puts water in a very different set of conditions than it is when it is in nature. And this is why it loses its naturally occurring structure. Okay, again, this is the same slide I showed you earlier. Modern water technology is what unstructures water. And so, regardless of where you get your water, whether it's from the grocery store in a plastic bottle, or it's from your own well, or it's from a municipal supply, it's coming to you, it's been processed, it's unstructured. If you want structured water, you have to do something to put it back in that state. So now we know that what we call quote unquote water is a very general term. You could say, what kind of water are we actually talking about? That just drinking water, excuse me, does not mean you're getting hydration for your body. And here's a few points just to consider about cellular hydration, okay? Very simple. First, all the cells of your body require water to carry out their essential functions. such as taking in nutrients and expelling toxins. Every cell has to do that. And on a cellular level in the body, water is the carrier for nutrients and toxins. Second point, the cell membrane, that is the outer layer of the cell, what we would consider like our skin on a macro level, is actually part of the brain of the cell because it's the membrane which decides what to let in and what to let out. The membrane decides that. Third point, cell membranes are looking for water in its natural state. That means structured water, to facilitate those essential cellular processes. How do the cells of your body recognize water? By its structure. So here you are drinking 8, 10 glasses of water a day, like it's recommended, of unstructured water. That water will not be recognized by the cells of your body as water because it's in an unstructured state. So you're actually giving your body something that it needs, but not in the state that it needs it. And so fortunately for all of us, the human body has a way of restructuring water. Otherwise, we'd all be dead before the age of 5 of dehydration, I'm sure. But in order to do that, the body has to use its energy to restructure the water. And it doesn't do it for all the water you give it. Some of it just passes through. So you end up losing energy from the water that you drink. And who knows, maybe that's why structured water has been found to be related to the aging process. Again, some of the reported effects of drinking structured water: detoxification, heightened immune function, improved nutrient absorption, increased mental clarity, increased longevity. Who doesn't want what's on this list? Of course, we all want this. We all consider these to be indications of good health. They've all been shown to be related to drinking structured water. So, next question for us: how can you maintain and improve the structure of your biowater? That's the water in your body. That's a good question. Okay, so to answer that question, we're going to go right back to our friend Dr. Masaru Emoto, and we're going to remember what he showed us about water, that water responds to intention. Not just the water in the laboratory in the bottles, but the water in your body also responds to your intention. Remember what I said, intention, how it's expressed, thoughts, feelings, words, different forms of expression. So could maintaining a healthy, elevated state of structured biowater in your body be as simple as thinking good thoughts? Oh, look at that. Where did we learn that from? Tinkerbell. Think good thoughts. Yes, of course it can be. So here's my short list: how to restructure and maintain the quality of your biowater. Okay, of course, drink only structured water. Don't drink anything that's not structured. Pay attention to what your habitual thoughts are, because those are your intentions. The water in your body doesn't say, oh, this is a random thought, or oh, that was just a joke. Everything you think affects the water in your body, consciously and unconsciously. Think about, what are your practices around meditation or prayer? What kind of feelings do you give yourself through your average day? Gratitude, courage, compassion, maybe other things, fear, not feeling safe, doubt, the words you speak, the sounds you make, the actions you take, the environment in which you live, all affects the quality of your biowater, including the extent to which the golden ratio might be or not be in your environment. Okay, we're going to come to that very shortly. So here's another book on my reading list. This is a great book. This book is so unique. It's unbelievable, okay? When you go to study the golden ratio, which I'm going to talk about in just a minute, because it's a proportion, you would think that the field of mathematics owns the golden ratio, because most of the books that you go to read about the golden ratio are written by mathematicians, and there's a lot of math in them. And, you know, how much does the majority of the adult population like math? Not that much, really. You know, we suffered through it in high school, maybe college. Thank God I'm done with it, okay? And the minimal amount of math that I can get through my life with is the amount that I'm comfortable with. But what these authors have done, one of whom is a doctor, the other whom, Matthew Cross, he's a Fortune 500 consultant. They've taken the golden ratio out of the field of mathematics and they brought it into everyday life. That's what's so beautiful about this book, okay? That's why it's called the Golden Ratio Lifestyle Diet. It's not about just the food you eat. It's about your lifestyle diet, how you think, your breathing, your waking and sleeping patterns, you know, all the different things that make up your average day. That's your lifestyle. And the degree to which you can incorporate the golden ratio into that can have a significant effect on your health. Could be a very interesting interview show, Lynda, I would think. So here's an example of golden ratio design in a glass carafe. This is one of the carafes that we carry in our business. I just show it as one example. The golden ratio is in the proportions of the sections of the carafe. And you know, golden ratio design glassware is not the only technology that's been created to restructure water. I can tell you that, you know, there are other technologies. This has been known for some time, not hundreds of years, but certainly for at least the last century, it's been known about structured water. And there are different technologies that have been designed to restructure water. For example, there's a company named TriBest, which has an appliance. It's a countertop appliance. It's like a Super Duty blender. It has a mineral basket in the bottom. You plug it in, you turn it on, it vortexes the water, and in 20 minutes you've got, you know, a container of structured water. And there's other ways of doing it too. Excuse me. So remember, this is what we're looking for. On a macromolecular level, we're looking for hexagonal structured water. I took this picture. Okay, this is an example of something you probably don't want to do with liquids you're going to be taking into your body. Plastic containers, styrofoam containers, keeping them around electromagnetic fields generated by computers and other electromagnetic, you know, a lot of appliances. It's just not a healthy place to keep liquids you're going to be taking into your body and then thinking it's going to support your health. That's what you're going to get from that is unstructured water. I took this picture at my local Walmart. You can go into Walmart, you can find water bottles of all kinds. Metal, plastic, some glass. None of them that you find there will be designed with the golden ratio. I can guarantee you that. They're not carrying golden ratio designed water containers. So that's what a golden ratio designed water bottle looks like. Okay, it's got proportions in the glass that are directly related to the Fibonacci sequence, which was an aspect of the golden ratio. This is designed by the company in Switzerland called Nature's Design Products, which carries this golden ratio glassware. Okay, this is the water crystal that comes from water that's been sitting in that water bottle. That's what it looks like. Well, you can tell it's structured water. It takes about 3 minutes. So here's my short and sweet take on sacred geometry. And I bring up sacred geometry because this is what we're referring to when we talk about the golden ratio, okay? Like I say, it's short and sweet. This is my take on sacred geometry. First of all, what is sacred geometry? When we talk about that, I say sacred geometry is the geometry of life. Geometry, we know, refers to forms, shapes, dimensions, proportions, proportional relationships, which are characteristic of living organisms and the earth. To me, that's what sacred geometry is, because life is sacred. Now, there's three different, what I would call expressions of sacred geometry that I'm going to talk about very briefly. One is the Fibonacci sequence, second is the golden ratio, and the third is called the flower of life. And they're all equivalent to the same thing, but they're different forms of expression, okay? So let's just look at the first one, Fibonacci sequence. It's named after a 13th century Italian mathematician named Leonardo Fibonacci. He actually traveled to the Far East and he studied mathematics with the Indian and Chinese mathematicians, and he came back to Western Europe with a whole bunch of information that they didn't have in Western European mathematics at that time, back in the 13th century. So this is one of the things. It's named, this sequence of numbers is named after him. Every number in the Fibonacci sequence is the sum of the two previous numbers. Okay, very simple algorithm there. You start with 1, you get to 2, 3, but then you go to 5, and then you go to 8, 13. You can see how each number is the two previous numbers added together, right? This creates what we would call an exponential sequence, which means it starts very slow and then it goes up very quickly. Okay. This sequence of numbers is so fascinating to mathematicians. They have actually devoted a whole journal to it. I won't go into that, but just to let you know, it's been studied a lot. Okay. And so, okay, what's so great about the Fibonacci sequence when it comes to water and nature? Well, it turns out that, and here's one of the things that we do on a mathematical basis with the Fibonacci sequence that we can then see in nature. So this is a series of squares that are arranged according to the numbers in the Fibonacci sequence. We start with 1 and we put them next to each other, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. Those are the first numbers in the Fibonacci sequence. And you can arrange them into a rectangle like this. And if you then take each square and you draw an arc from one corner to the opposite corner, using the corner in between as the point of, drawing the arc, you actually can connect all those arcs the way it is in the bottom graph here. You get a spiral. See that? You get a spiral that's created by the individual arcs in each of those 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8 squares. That's called the golden spiral. And guess what? That spiral is found in a lot of different places in nature. I'll show you in just a moment. Here's one of the ways that the Fibonacci sequence, you can see it in nature. It's in the branching and growth pattern of trees and shrubs. When the more they grow, the more they branch according to the Fibonacci sequence. It's not the digital sequence, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, it's according to the Fibonacci sequence. Oh, there's the golden spiral in the shape of an egg. Look at that. It's in the shape of your ear. It's in the human body. The Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio are completely in the proportions of the human body. There's the spiral in different forms in nature. It's the way that vines curl. It's in the seed head of a sunflower seed. That's a section on the upper right there of the chambered nautilus shell, which is a mollusk that lives in the ocean. It's in the unfurling leaves of a rose flower, in the petals of a rose flower. So you look in nature, you look at geometry in nature, you start to find this everywhere. Again, there's the nautilus shell showing you, we've superimposed the golden spiral on top of the nautilus shell to show you the chambered nautilus grows its shell exactly according to the proportions of the Fibonacci sequence. There's a whole bunch of spirals, most of them in nature, some of them human-made, because we do love those spirals. Just to show you, spirals are everywhere, and usually the spirals, the most beautiful and pleasing spirals to the human eye are the spirals that are in the form of the golden spiral. Okay, so what is the golden ratio? This is the second expression of sacred geometry I said I would talk about. Well, it's a proportion, and the exact proportion is 1 to 1.61803 ... And what does that ... mean? That ... means that those numbers go on, actually, they never stop. They go on into infinity. So it's not a finite number. In mathematics, it's what's called, what is it called? I forget, an unnatural number. It's not a definite number. And anyways, this is the proportion that we find in nature. I call it nature's blueprint, the design principle for life on Earth, okay? Just remember 1 to 1.6 or 1.62. You know, if you round it off to 2 decimal places, that's fine. I like to remember 1.61803 because I can remember 5 decimal places. So this is from that book that I showed you, The Golden Ratio Lifestyle Diet. And this is a graph they created to demonstrate the mathematical equivalence of the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio. And what they, in order to do that, they took every 2 adjacent numbers in the Fibonacci sequence, and you can see those along the bottom section of the graph. Okay, they divided every 2 adjacent numbers, the smaller one into the bigger one, and you get a graph that looks like this. Of course, when the numbers are small, the differences are very big. But notice, you know, that is a, like I said, an exponential sequence. As the numbers get bigger, the differences get smaller. And where does the graph kind of level itself out? Look at that. It's exactly on that number. They give it the Greek letter phi, 1.61803, the golden ratio number. So that shows you it doesn't matter to nature, and it doesn't matter to water, which is a part of nature, whether the golden ratio is in the form of the exact proportion of the golden ratio, or it's in the form of the golden spiral, or if it's in the form of the Fibonacci sequence. They're all the same thing. That's what this is showing you. It's another form in which mathematicians like to talk about the golden ratio. You can take a line of any length, doesn't matter the length, because it's a proportion, and there's always one point on that line, on a line of any length, where when you, that point will divide the line into 2 sections such that you get the a relationship such as this. If you call the sections A and B, excuse me, then you get a relationship. A is to B as B is to A plus B. Okay, that's probably why a lot of people don't care for mathematics, I would say. Again, here is the golden spiral, and look, it exists from the microcosm to the macrocosm. The Fibonacci sequence is in the proportion of the bones in your fingers. See that? Look, right down on the right, on the bottom, there's a X-ray of fingers. See that? 2, 3, 5, 8. Those are the proportions of the 4 bones in your fingers. Exactly the Fibonacci sequence proportions. The microcosm, like I said, it's in the seed head of a sunflower seed. It's in the unfurling petals of most flowers. It's in the chambered nautilus shell. It's the shape of hurricanes. It's the shape of spiral galaxies. That's why I called it nature's blueprint, you know, from the microcosm to the macrocosm. Who's ever designing this grand affair has this in mind as their design principle. Here's my last book I'm going to show you, book cover. This was published in the mid-1970s by an architect. I think it has a rather unfortunate title called The Power of Limits. Doesn't really tell you what it's about, other than if you look at the graph and you know what that graph is. This architect decided he wanted to do a study of different forms of nature to just see how widespread the golden ratio is. So he did proportional studies in nature. I'm going to show you some of the plates from his book here, okay? He studied leaves. Now, this is the thing about the golden ratio being a proportion. It doesn't matter the size of something. It doesn't matter the shape of something. What matters is the proportions in that size and shape. Proportion is something different. Remember, proportion, we get a proportion from comparing two different things, whether we're comparing them by size or shape or whatever, okay? So here he's showing you the shapes of different types of leaves from different plants, but in each case, when you look at the geometry of it, you find the Fibonacci sequence. You find the golden ratio proportions. He studied seashells. You know, you can see it. Everyone likes to see it in that chambered nautilus, but it doesn't matter the seashell that you use. Regardless, all sea creatures that grow shells grow them in the proportions of the Fibonacci sequence. He studied fishes, fishes of different species. They're different sizes. They're different shapes. It doesn't matter the species or the size or the shape. When you look at the proportions, you always find the golden ratio. He studied insects. Again, it doesn't matter the species. It doesn't matter the size or the shape. When you look at the proportions, you find the golden ratio. It's in the proportions of the human body. I like to use this as an example. Regardless of how tall you are or what shape you are, you take the distance from the top of your head to your belly button, and you call that 1, whatever that distance is. And then you take the distance from your belly button to the bottom of your feet, and that will be 1.61803 on every person. It's the same. Regardless of shape or size, it's the proportion. We are designed according to the golden ratio. You can find it in numerous different relationships on the human face. You can find the spiral in the shapes on our earth. Look at that. The shape of Africa is a perfect golden spiral. So we come to the last expression of sacred geometry that I'm going to talk about. Again, I'm going to try to keep this brief. It's called the flower of life. Okay. Now, the flower of life, and there it is. That's what it looks like in a graphic design. Okay. The flower of life is composed simply of intersecting circles. That's all it is. It's intersecting circles. Now, of course, they're intersecting at very specific and defined, degrees. And what's so special about the flower of life? Well, this is very interesting. First of all, it predates human history. It was around before us. Secondly, no one knows where it came from. Third, it's found on ancient temples and monuments all over the world. In other words, it's not specific to any one culture. No culture can say, oh yes, we originated the flower of life. No, it's found everywhere. And interestingly, and this is very unusual for anything or in any culture, everywhere it's found, it's called the same thing. It's always called the flower of life, regardless of which culture you find it in. You don't find anything else like that, pretty much. And although it has not been studied scientifically, those people who have studied it, and there have been some people that have studied it, authors such as Greg Braden and Drunvalo Melchizedek, they've written books about it. They claim that it contains all the geometry of life within it. Now, remember, we're talking about a design. This is the design. It's a series of intersecting circles that contains all the geometry of life within it. So, and you can also find the golden ratio in it, and you can find the Fibonacci sequence in it. I don't have exact, graphic representations of that, but I guarantee you, if you look, you'll find it. So here's the last thing I'm going to say. You want to learn more about the flower of life, go to YouTube. There's a series on YouTube called Spirit Science Series. Very interesting series. And number 6 in that series is all about the flower of life. It's only about 11 minutes, and it's probably one of the best 11 minutes you can invest in your education around sacred geometry. Okay, so there we go. Unstructured water, structured water. Big difference. Big difference in how they affect the health of your body. There's another glass carafe that's designed using the Fibonacci sequence. And it's interesting that that much of the Fibonacci sequence, which is not a lot, it's only the first 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. That's the numbers of the Fibonacci sequence that define the proportions of that carafe. That's enough of the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio for water to move itself from the unstructured state back into a structured state. And it's interesting that it does it without movement. So it actually is contrary to one of the factors that I identified as being one of the factors that unstructures water, which is stagnant storage. Yet you can have water being stored stagnant in a glass container that's designed using the golden ratio, and it will become structured and it will stay structured. Again, there's a water bottle. Very simple. You put the golden ratio proportions into glass, water likes it. Water gets restructured. So here's my conclusion, friends. Don't let this be the end. Let this be the beginning of your study of structured water. Continue to educate yourself. Act on what you learn. And by doing so, you will raise your water consciousness. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Lynda, for sponsoring this event. It's been a real pleasure to be able to present this to all of you.
Thank you so much, Halsey. That was so interesting. And every time I hear information about this, I learn something new.
Yeah.
Because there's so much. I mean, I don't know how you have all of that knowledge that you do, but I'm glad that you do and you shared it with us. I just have a quick question from somebody asking, where do you buy it? Obviously, your goldenratioproducts.com is probably the best place.
Yeah, online. You can get online, goldenratioproducts.com. Here in the U.S., we're the distributors for the U.S.
Okay.
So you can buy it retail on our website. There are other resellers. We sell wholesale as well. So there are different people and organizations and stores around the country that carry it.
And I'm glad you brought that up. So if anybody is watching this that has like a health and wellness kind of business and they may be interested in selling your products as a wholesaler, they should contact you for that.
Our website, sure. Yep.
Okay, great. I do have a few other questions if you have a few moments, because we got a little bit of a late start, unfortunately, but I do have a few questions, and I'm sure a lot of people will go and watch this video after, because we'll share the heck out of it.
Okay, great.
So my question for you is, one thing I just want to reiterate is, you had said that people can structure water by putting it in your products, which I have a bottle right here, which I love.
Yeah.
Or they can even structure their water by putting, like Emoto did, by putting positive phrases on the water and things like that, correct?
Absolutely, sure. You can do what Emoto did.
Yeah.
Write it on a piece of paper and put it on the side of your bottle.
And it will structure your water.
Yeah, put it underneath.
So why should somebody buy your product if they could just do it on their own?
They don't have to.
Right.
What I say is that, the glassware holds the intention for you. It holds the intention, you could say, for the water to be the way you were in nature. Be structured the way you, and water responds to that just by the shape of the glass. And one of the things I didn't talk about in the presentation is, usually when, I give this presentation, one of the things I say to people is, there's 3 things about selling this product that make it different from a lot of other products. And it has to do with the education that's required for you to understand what it's doing. When, you know, one is most people haven't heard of structured water. So you got to tell them what that's about. And secondly, most people haven't heard of the golden ratio. So you need to explain what that is. And the third is most people are a little skeptical, or if not a lot skeptical, of the fact that the shape of a container can energetically influence what is held within inside of it.
Yeah.
We're not raised with that idea.
No.
So, you know, and of course, that's the basis of feng shui. And most people have heard of feng shui, even though most people can't tell you what it is.
Yeah.
But that's the essence of it. The shape and the design of the physical environment affects the flow of energy in that environment, what in the East they call qi. And that affects your experience in that environment. So in a general level, that's kind of my definition of feng shui. You know, here's feng shui for water. Go back to the way you were in nature, and the water says, you bet. Boom. 3 minutes, I'm back.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
amazing.
and I have your Aladdin carafe, and I do have a question about that. I was looking at your website earlier, and you have a few different like carafes, but they're named different things. You have
Different
the one that
sizes.
was the Aladdin, but then you have, what's the other one called?
Well, there's one called the Delicate,
Okay.
and there's one called the Family, the Aladdin Family, which is larger.
Right, but not the Aladdin ones, but what's the other ones you offer?
Oh,
That's
the
more,
carafes?
yeah.
There's a carafe called the Cadis.
Yeah, so what is the difference between those? Is it just the look of it?
The shape of the Aladdin carafe, which I showed you, it's kind of got that, you know,
Like a genie bottle,
yeah, like a genie bottle shape.
almost like a little,
That
yeah.
was the original shape that was created by the designer who came up with this.
Okay.
And we talked about him on your show on the 21st,
Yep.
Thomas Chochola. That was the original shape. But, you know, some people say, well, you know, it takes up so much space. I can't fit it in my refrigerator. So the present day designers and owners of the business said, no problem. We can design a glass bottle to hold that same amount of water. That's kind of like, you know, doesn't have that wider at the bottom shape, but still has golden ratio proportions. And that's what they did. And that's what the Cadis carafe is. It's
Okay.
got a smaller footprint, you could say, so it fits in the refrigerator a little bit easier.
Yeah.
And it still restructures the water.
Yeah, I like the Aladdin one only because I keep it on my counter, and it's a visual cue for me that that's how much I want to drink in a day.
Right.
Right. And so that's given me, between that and a couple of these bottles, there's my quantity of water for the day.
Okay.
And,
great.
and it's just a very good visual for me.
Yeah.
I have to tell you that, and I have a couple of questions, but I've got to tell you about a movie I saw that just had about structured water. So you said something about when people put water into one of your products, 3 minutes, and it becomes structured.
Right.
Okay. What about hot water?
Well,
can you put hot water in the products?
Okay, here's the thing with hot. When you boil water, it unstructures it. You can take water, structured water, and freeze it, and it'll maintain its structure. But if you boil water, even structured water, it unstructures it. Now, they have up until now carried a glass bottle, one of this series, water bottles, that has a slightly different formulation of glass. This is standard quartz glass, meaning there's no additives. You know, glass is quartz. It's sand. It's made from sand. It's just quartz. In order to make glass heat resistant, they add boron. So they call it borosilicate glass. And there is one of the water bottles and the larger carafes that have been made with borosilicate glass. So you can put a hot drink in your water bottle, and even though the water has been unstructured, the bottle will constantly be restructuring your hot beverage.
Okay, so I could do it for tea, coffee, doesn't
right.
matter.
And that bottle that you showed, that wide mouth bottle, is what they call the hot bottle.
Right.
They just discontinued that.
What? So what are we going to do instead?
Well, they make a porcelain coffee cup. with the golden ratio proportions and the flower life on the bottom. That's one thing. I don't know. Someone else has got to make it because they say it's too expensive to make. And with the COVID and everything and the decrease in business, they're going through a contraction the way a lot of businesses are. Excuse me.
Charge more. I'd be willing to pay more for it. Oh, Halsey.
We have some left in stock.
All right. Well, I'm going to snatch them up. Whatever you got, I'm taking.
What I don't take. No, there are some left, but that's unfortunate. I will definitely give them the feedback. They shouldn't be doing that. But
two last questions I have.
Yes.
Does it matter the type of water you put into your product? So can you take it right out of your tap if you're on a well? What if you're on municipal water?
Right.
Plastic bottled water? What's your recommendation?
Okay. This goes back to one of the things I talked about at the beginning of the presentation, which is current water consciousness. Use water you trust.
Okay.
Okay, use water you trust. People have preferences among different bottled waters, usually because of the taste. But, taste in water is primarily a function of the mineral content and the pH. It has nothing to do with the structured level of it. And any bottled water is going to be unstructured. So I say use water you trust. And just remember, if it's been processed, it's unstructured. Yeah. So look at the mineral content, look at the pH, look at the source, look at the process that it's been under. Bring yourself some understanding of the journey the water has been on before it gets to you.
Yeah. That's
so you have an understanding of what it's been through, whether or not you want to trust that water.
Yeah. And what I would say, and this is a whole nother topic that I hope to have someone on my show soon about, is testing your water, especially here in Maine. If you're on a well, test your water. I've had mine done. I had arsenic in our water, so I have a special filtration system put into our house.
Yep.
And so I trust our water now, but so many people don't. And there's so many illnesses and diseases you can get from the various things in the water. So,
and and this is another point just to relate to that, Lynda, groundwater, which if you have your well, that's what you're getting is groundwater.
Yep.
It doesn't stay the same from one year to the next.
Good point.
It changes. So, every few years, or at a minimum, every 5 years, you should test your water because it doesn't stay the same. Yeah. For example, we have a well here at our house. And we had our water tested and there's, too many minerals, which means you have to get a water softener. Now, the water softener company comes once a year to adjust it doesn't stay the same. The water, the way the water is being treated. And what do? They test the water. They want to see what the current level is in the water so they know how to adjust the equipment to compensate for that. So you can't take it for granted.
Right. Yeah. No, we've been at our house for 15 years and we've had our water tested multiple times.
Yeah.
Just because you're right. You don't know.
And if you're on a municipal supply, I'll say this for anyone who's listening, there are websites that can give you the public water test results from any municipality in the United States.
Oh, great.
Every municipality that offers water to residents that live there has to test the water and they have to publish those results. It's publicly available information. You don't need to do a Freedom of Information Act to get it. There are websites that you can go to that can show you what's in your water for your municipality.
And so like here in Maine, if they have Portland Water District, would they go directly to Portland Water District or would they still go to the municipality? Do you know?
I don't know. No, there's actually, it's an independent website that does this.
Oh,
Portland Water District might publish the results of their water test. They should, but you can get it from them. You might have to ask them for it.
Okay, great. That's great information. I just learned something new again from you. All right, and the last question I have is the flower of life. You have the flower of life design and a lot of your products in the bottom of a lot of your products. And there's an option for colors. There's white and gold and rainbow and there's platinum or whatever. What's the difference between all of them? Well, and why offer them?
It's been demonstrated that the flower of life, which is only it's a two-dimensional design, does have the effect of restructuring water. That's why we have what's called an energy plate, which is a simple glass plate. I should have one here to show you. It's a glass.
One.
Yeah,
I have one.
Yeah, okay. There you go. It's a glass plate with a gold flower of life on it. And you can sit a regular glass of water on that that's not designed using the golden ratio. It takes a little longer because it's two-dimensional rather than three-dimensional, but that will restructure the water. Okay. The different colors are used based on color therapy. And in color therapy, different colors and combination of colors have different psychological and energetic effects. So, for example, white, which is on the bottom of all the water bottles, is considered to be for health, because the color white contains all the colors within it. And so that's considered to be really supportive of the health of the physical body. They have a color that's rainbow. It has rainbow colors on it. They call it the happy carafe because it infuses the water with the energy of joy. And I actually have a short video of one of our resellers at a trade show, and a woman comes along and picks up the carafe and just starts laughing and showing it to people, saying, "This is the funniest thing I've ever seen. It's amazing. I can't stop laughing," just from holding the carafe. He's very sensitive.
I guess, yeah.
And the color gold in color therapy is related to terrific support for the immune system in the body, and as well as heightened consciousness. It's conscious evolution. So if you are into evolving your consciousness, gold really supports that. And then they have the color platinum on the larger carafes. And in color therapy, platinum is associated with increased self-esteem, self-confidence, what we would call self-perception.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great explanation.
Okay.
I will just give a quick little testimony that, I was drinking out of your bottles years ago when I first met you. I went off the wagon and went back to whatever, like just drinking water out of my tap, but, in a glass.
Yeah.
And which I want you to explain too, because I know people want to know what happens if you take it out of this and put it in something else. But I will just quickly, with my testimony, is I have noticed, so I've only been drinking structured water now. I would say it's been a month and a half, maybe 2 months. Energy is better. I feel like I don't have to drink as much water. I'm always hydrated. Right. So I used to be thirsty a lot, even though I drank quite a bit of water.
Yeah.
And I've been losing weight, but I can't totally put it to the water. I'm going to think it's a part of it, though, detoxing, right? Yeah. I have been working out more and eating a little bit differently, but I definitely feel that's part of the equation that's been helping me to release toxins and fat cells and all of that stuff.
Yeah. I'll just share with you, I got an email just last week from a customer who wrote to us to say, "I just want to tell you, I just had an eye exam." This is an older guy, right? He said, "And my eyes are getting better. And I'm telling you, it's because I'm drinking structured water. I know it is."
Take it. Sure. Right?
Said, okay.
That's awesome. As long as he says it and you don't, right?
Yeah.
So if you could answer that question for me, if you take water out of a structured bottle and you put it in metal or glass or plastic, does it stay structured?
It does. Depending on the material that you put it in, it stays structured for different lengths of time. And this is very interesting because they did this study back at the beginning when they first designed the golden ratio carafe, and they had that very same question. And so they would take structured water from the carafe. If you put that water into another glass container, a straight-sided water pitcher or a glass bottle or even a mason jar, as long as it's glass, the water will stay structured up to a week.
Oh, wow.
And that's pretty amazing considering, again, it's stagnant storage.
Yeah.
Water likes glass the best. And some people know that intuitively. I've met many people who know that intuitively, that water likes glass. Let's say you put it into a metal container like stainless steel, which is very popular for water bottles. that's good. I mean, water, structured water will stay structured in a stainless steel container maybe 1 or 2 days.
Okay.
Certainly long enough for you to use it in most stainless steel containers. But if you take structured water and you put it into a plastic container, it will become unstructured in a matter of hours. That's how come I can say when you buy water from the store in a plastic container, I can guarantee you it's unstructured because it's been in there for more than a couple hours before it gets to you.
Exactly.
Water does not like plastic, and it likes glass the best.
And unfortunately, that's what most people are buying today is plastic water.
It's
in
convenient.
bottles.
You
Yeah,
can't
it's
beat it for
convenient.
convenience. There's no arguing with the convenience of it.
I know.
So, we're not going to get rid of the plastic, but you can do something to restructure the water before you drink it.
Yeah.
And that's what's important.
Absolutely. So in closing, I want to tell you about this movie I actually just watched early this morning. I never wake up super early. I was up at 5:30 a.m.
Wow.
And I said, I'm not going back to sleep. I'm going to watch TV, but I'm not going to watch crap TV. I'm going to watch something off the Gaia channel.
Huh.
If people aren't familiar with Gaia, you can get it. It's an extra service you can add onto your Amazon account, whatever you want to do. You can get it independently, but really great documentaries and shows on there.
Yeah.
And I watched one called Supercharged. Have you heard of it?
No.
Oh, you got to watch it, Halsey.
Okay.
So it talks about how to supercharge the energy in your body. And the biggest thing they talked about was structured water.
There you go.
They in depth, they talked about the golden ratio.
Super.
And it's amazing. And so you have to watch it. I don't know where else it's available out there, but that's what I saw it on.
Hey,
and they talked about, how to grounding is important for your body, but it says it's not just the food you're taking in. You got to have structured water. You got to ground yourself, connecting with nature. Ice baths are huge. So there's this whole thing in there about how can you supercharge the energy in your body, because we're all electrical beings. Right. And it's phenomenal. So Supercharged with a D.
Okay.
Check it out.
Thank you.
All right.
That's great.
So again, hopefully anybody watching this, if you're watching it live or if you watched it, you're going to watch the recording after the fact. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Halsey, for sharing your information tonight.
You're very welcome.
Really fascinating.
Yeah, that's great.
And if you want to get any structured water products, goldenratioproducts.com. If you want to hear the interview I did, which is pretty similar to what we already talked about tonight, go to livinglifeshow.com.
Probably a little shorter.
Little shorter, yeah. Living Life Show.
Just the audio, though. Just the audio.
Just the audio, exactly. This was great because I had all the pictures. But I have a ton of episodes on there, so check them out. Sign up for my newsletter at livinglifeshow.com. Get it out once a month, tell you about shows coming up, shows you might have missed, and other good things going on, and just connect with me through there. So I actually have a comment here. I've been drinking structured, this is from Annie Ferrigno. I've been drinking structured water since 2014 when I was diagnosed with chronic Lyme that had been undiagnosed for many years. Major detoxing gave me my life back. Structured water keeps me alive.
Wow. That's
wow, amazing. Annie, thank you so much. That's awesome. Love testimonials like that.
Yeah.
Yep. So I know a lot of people that have Lyme disease, so I'm going to spread that word to people I know in that, or different resources for that.
Let me add one more thing.
Sure.
As water beings, water is fundamental to our health. So I like to say water is the foundation of any wellness program.
Yeah. Great way to end it, Halsey.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. And have a good evening. And we'll see you guys again soon when I have another Facebook Live. Take care.
Good night.